We are going to resume our talk. My duty this morning is going to speak a little bit about which is going to be the strategy of Repsol in terms of HSE and climate for the coming years. In fact, I will show you a broad picture of it, and later on, Arantxa and Antonio will go into the details and specific projects and activities. And later on, we didn't mention, but Susanna will speak a little bit about the green bond and the experience so far. So this has been a job that has been done during the last months, almost 1 year, and has been run really in parallel with the rethinking of the company and the rethinking of our strategy as a business. And I would highlight first that this is the way we intend to manage HSE and climate. It's not an independent strategy, it's not an independent story. It goes hand by hand with the business strategy. And I've been very fortunate to have had the opportunity of leaving this work on the business side, because I was running the E&P business till July, and now at this side of the work, and I see that really business strategy and HSE strategy is the same thing. I will go into a number of action lines that we have developed for the coming years. They will be composed, each of the 11 lines will be composed of specific projects with targets, with delivery. Let's say this is the way we like to build our plans. And as I said, later on, Arantxa will go into some details of that. So a single slide to help me to outline this strategy on HSE. I will later on go a little bit more separate into climate. 11 action lines, fully developed with the business lines, fully integrated into the business strategy, but they intend to be simple, clear, and specific. Of course, there is just one sentence trying to summarize each of the action lines, but each of them, they are very touchable, and in fact, they may be a change in this new view and fresh look at 2025. The next wave of HSE activities is that we have tried to be very tangible and very touchable. Of course, there will be an evolution on the management systems, models, etc. But there will be a lot of activity in the field, in the refinery, in the petrochemical side as part of this strategic line. So let's go one by one, and hopefully at the end of maybe 10 minutes, I will be able to communicate to you, which is what we are going to do in the next years. First is about process safety. This is a very simple concept, but is at the very key of safety excellence. Process safety has to do with containment of hydrocarbons. Hydrocarbons, gas, liquids, they need to be contained in vessels, pipelines, and any problem of containment of hydrocarbons that you have, then you may have a release, then you have a process safety issue. So we are going to focus on that, and this comes with integrity prevention, trying to avoid leaks, and monitoring very well every minor leak of containment that you may have in your installations. We have KPIs and we have prevention plans. Of course, this links very much with the programs for maintenance of our facilities, both fields and refining and petrochemicals. So this is going to be action line number 1, and again, this will be composed of specific projects. Number 2 is quantification of environmental impacts. This you know that there is now a new wave of thinking on a quantification of impacts of dependencies, the concept of natural capital. So we are going to apply these concepts into the quantification of our environmental impacts and dependencies, and how this is done as part of our business analysis, such that we are able to quantify let's say, the monetary impact of our activity in terms of environment, and we fully embed that into our business decisions. Number 3 is non-operated assets, and this is very important, especially in E&P. Also in other type of downstream activities, we have joint ventures, But in our E&P operations, 1/3 of our assets are non-operated. 1/3 are cooperated with other companies, and 1/3, more or less, are operated by Repsol. You have seen an example, Regan, which is mostly operated by Repsol, some type of cooperation with Sonatrach, but we had good control of the way we developed the project. So you were able to see Fernando speaking very clearly about Repsol standards, etc. What happens when we are non-operators is that we need to live with the standards of someone else, which is going to be our operated partner. So we need to manage that. We need to positively influence the operator when we are not the operator about the way we would like to do things, or we would like them to do things. And eventually, even before thinking on partnering with a new operator, we need to think whether or not they will comply with our expectations in terms of HSE performance and excellence. So in some cases, we have decided not to go to a number of ventures because we believe that the operator had not the same type of, let's say, standards or the same time of attitude with regards with HSE, with regard to climate change, etc. So this is going to be a relatively newer line, but definitely it's going to be very important, especially in E&P. Number 4 is excellence in the learning process. And looks philosophical, but we would like to make it tangible, especially when we do investigation of incidents. We need to change a little bit the culture of this type of incident investigation, moving that into a way of learning rather than just an investigation on what happened and who was responsible for that. Of course, investigation always has some connotation about discovering, but discovering for learning is going to be the new way of thinking. And also we are doing some structured approach to learning. For instance, when we finish a development project, when we finish Regan, the team is conveying, is working together, and is trying to learn and to put the learnings in written for the next development project. So this is going to be a line of action, again, with specific projects. Number 5 is a little bit newer also for us, decommissioning. When we acquired Talisman, we acquired a significant decommissioning activities, especially in the North Sea, Norway, and the UK. We have also some decommissioning ongoing for the near future in other countries, but especially in the North Sea, we will have a lot of decommissioning projects. And this is going to be the key word. It's going to be a project. It's not just an activity to close a field. It's a project that needs to be planned and it needs to be executed with the proper standards. And I would say that decommissioning needs to be considered from the very beginning of the life cycle of our assets. Even when we are entering a new asset, we need to think when we are going to decommission 20 years after, how we are going to do that, and how we best prepare the asset in order to have the proper decommissioning and putting into action even concept of circular economy in the decommissioning, how we are going to reutilize all the structure and hardware that we are going to dismantle. So this is number 5. Number 6 is keeping social license. We've been working many years ago, and I believe this is in the DNA of Repsol, about keeping the social license to operate, engaging with local communities. But this is a never-ending story, and we want to continue pushing and doing specific projects because at the end of the day, you need to be excellent in environmental protection, but at the same time, you need to convince your local communities that you are good, and whatever you are doing, you are going to protect their ecosystems and you are going to protect their way of life. And there is a lot of communication and interface which is required. It's not just doing things in the proper way. It's, as you saw in Regan, is engaging with the local community, explaining to them what we are going to do to protect their environment. So this is going to be a work that we want to maintain well-structured and with the proper dedication of people. Number 7, water management. We are working and we have developed what we call the Repsol Water Tool, which is the type of model management process and associated software tool in order to help us to consider our impact on water in, let's say, the proper way and in the more structured way. Again, we are looking at that as one of the examples of circular economy, which means that we need to use as little as possible fresh water, the natural resource. We need to use the water in the proper way during the life cycle of our assets, use the water longer, reuse the water, etc. And then whatever is at the end left as a waste from our use of water, regenerating and disposing of that in the proper way. So this is the concept of circular economy that we are applying to many of our fields of activity, but especially in water management, we are going to do a much more, let's say, organized and structured way in order to that we identify how we can minimize the use of water and recycle as much as possible. Number 8, I will dedicate later on some words to that because this is fully related to climate change, is reduce our carbon and energy intensity. Josu John has already spoken about the targets. I will rephrase a little bit because I believe the way we are looking at metrics and targets is a little bit different than in the past. And then we have from 9 to 11, which are, let's say, cross-cutting lines. The first 8 was water, CO2, decommissioning, etc. Now we have 3 cross-cutting action lines. One is culture and leadership, and I believe that during the last years we've been working quite intensively on diagnosing the state of the culture in each of our countries and assets, and now we would like to put some additional action lines in place. The first one is going to be a program on leadership. I believe that culture is something for everyone in the company, but the leaders need to show up and be seen as the role models for the culture you want to embed into the company. So we are going to put a training program, new one, more innovative, even looking at the emotions of the culture of safety. And I have to say that Josu John has already committed that the ExCom is going to be the first that is going to go to this training program. We are going to test the program, and if it's good enough, we will deploy within the whole organization, which are not just the executives of the company, but second levels and third level managers, everyone that has a responsibility with people working with them, they will go through this training program. 10, digitalization. And well, we have a formal digital program in our company, and HAC and climate is not an exception of an area in which digitalization can provide a much more powerful tool in order to manage our activities. So basically, we will start with data analytics. We have a lot of information about incidents, about environmental situations, etc. I believe that a better way of managing this database and putting that into high-performance computing and using data analytics which will allow us to use that information in a much better way, and having even some sort of artificial intelligence helping us to take useful decisions coming from all this database on safety and environment. And finally, number 11 is developing technical knowledge. We recognize that HAC requires also technical expertise in certain areas. And sometimes we want this technical expertise to be in the operations, but sometimes when you got into very much specialized knowledge, then you cannot have an expert everywhere. So you need to have the experts well identified in aviation standards, in risk management, in etc., and have this knowledge available to all the operations when they need. So basically, this is the way we are going to approach in the coming years our HAC management and the HAC 11 key action lines that, again, we'll deploy in terms of projects, and Arantxa will tell you about some of them. Okay, so a word on climate change. Josu John commented this morning, there will be a new way of thinking about the company. As an energy company, evolving from oil and gas activities towards low carbon businesses, as Alejandro has explained to us how we are starting. So you've seen this morning a good combination of how we would like to manage in a responsible way our oil and gas activities, in that case, Regan as an example of natural gas production, but also entering into the low carbon business. Which is behind that is that we want to be a company that will accompany the world in reduction the carbon intensity of the energy production and the energy use. And we will be part of the solution. And you have seen that we will work in energy efficiency. This is something that we are doing since many years ago, but there is still a lot to be done on making our operations more efficient and delivering more energy per unit of energy we produce. We consider, as part of this strategy, natural gas as a key element of the decarbonization of the world. Alejandro mentioned the combination of renewable and gas is going to be inevitable. It's going to be a very key part of the decarbonization of the power generation. You need renewable, but you need natural gas because renewable energy is intermittent by nature, and you need to provide an energy which is affordable and which is stable and secure. So we believe that this combination is going to be part of our story for the coming years. Definitely there will be other technologies like carbon capture, use, and storage. For the time being, we are not in the storage part of the CO2, but we are doing a significant job on carbon use and how we can use CO2, for example, to produce polyurethane in our chemical plants is one of the projects that we are running today. So there will be a lot of work in that part of carbon capture, use, and storage. And definitely, depending on the evolution of the technology, we will be more or less protagonistic about that. And probably this is how we can, let's say, depict our view on the climate change, which at the end of the day is decarbonizing the energy supply while at the same time being able to provide energy which is affordable, which is secure, which is stable for the world. And we will be part, again, of the solution. We are doing our own strategy, we are doing our own work, but we are working also with others. This is a big problem, climate change. So cooperation and collaboration is going to be key. So you may know that we are a founder member of the OGCI, and we will continue working with this organization as a key pillar of our collaboration strategy. But we are partnering and adhering to a number of initiatives when we believe help us to build our own differentiated strategy in climate change. And we are endorsing the methane guiding principles. So we are endorsing the principles for responsible investment, et cetera, et cetera. And later on, I believe that Antonio will make some additional words on that. Let me finish with going a little bit more again with the targets on climate change, because this is a quite new approach for Repsol. You know that in the past, we've been working on the reduction of CO2, what we call the direct emissions of CO2. This is in your right-hand part of your slide. When we speak about CO2 avoided or CO2 reduced, we mean, or we meant in the past, and we continue monitoring that, is the CO2 we emit from our operated assets. And we quantify 100% of the CO2 we emit in our operated assets, whatever the percentage we own in these assets. The view here is because we are the operators, we have full control on the way we manage the operations and the CO2. This is what you saw in the past. We had and we still have, a target of reducing 2.1 million tons of CO2 in our operated assets in 2020 as compared to 2006. So this is still there. We are in the right path. I believe that we have already, at close of 2017, we have already reduced 1.4 million out of the 2.1. So it's still some way to go till 2020, and we maintain this commitment. This is the blue line that you see in the graph. But now we are announcing a new, more stringent and more ambitious target that says that taking the baseline in 2017, we intend to reduce 3 million tons of CO2 in our operated assets in 2025. This is the orange line that you saw, which is more ambitious and more stringent than the blue one that we have till 2020. So this is going to be the new, so probably the 2.1 will be there, and we are in the right path in 2020, but we need to do more, because if we want to achieve the 3 million is the difference, if you look at the axis, is the difference between the 4.5 millions in 2025 and the 1.5 million in 2017. This subtraction is the difference, the 3 additional that we want to intend to reduce. So we have direct emissions of CO2 from our operations. This is one part of the story. The second one is more to do with the energy we produce and with the energy mix in our future that we produce. And this is fully taking into consideration this strategy of entering into the low carbon business. When we speak about carbon intensity, CO2s emitted per unit of energy we produce, we change a little bit the scope. It's going to be fully complementary with the other one. We are not going to speak anymore about operated assets. It's everything we own. And everything we own at the working interest that we have or the participation we have in all of our ventures. So this is, let's say, the perimeter of our business. In that perimeter, regardless of whether we operate or not operate, we want to reduce the intensity and move into the low carbon future that the society is requiring. And because the Paris Agreement is asking for 40% of reduction of this CO2 intensity or carbon intensity in 2040, this is the target that we are putting to our energy mix. We will make our energy mix to move into the direction of the Paris Agreement. And because we want to put something in between, because 2040 is very far in time, we are putting, to start with, the 3% reduction in 2020, which is almost there. Definitely, the way of thinking at that, as I say, if you reduce the direct emissions, this is going to be okay. This will reduce your intensity. But if you enter into the low carbon business and you buy hydraulic or you buy gas power generation with gas, or you buy aeolic or solar, you will be reducing the energy, the carbon intensity of the energy you are producing. So this is the way of looking at this second part of the objective. So this is what I had in the first part of this third part of the presentation this morning. Now I would like to invite Arantxa, that will speak a little bit more in detail about the specific projects on these strategic lines of HAC. And later on, Antonio will go and will explain much better than me the CO2 views and the CO2 commitments for the coming years. So thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I work for the Strategy and Control Department within the Sustainability Division, and we have been coordinating all the safety and environment strategic planning process together, that has been carried out together with the company strategic planning, as Luis mentioned. I'm going to talk very briefly about the process, and I'm trying to go over the key projects that covers all the new safety and environment strategy to 2025. So the strategic planning has been led by the Safety and Environment Committee within the company, and has been approved or endorsed by the Executive Committee this last September. Two groups of safety and environment experts from the company, from corporate areas, but also from the business lines and the assets have participating in the reflections. In this slide, you have the timeline. We started last November, and we have finished in July when the strategy was approved, and as I said, recently endorsed by the executive committee. About the process, we conducted an in-depth internal and external analysis gathering information from all our stakeholders. We built the SWOT matrix that allowed us to decide where we'll be heading to in terms of safety and environment and climate. And we draw up the 11 strategic lines that Luis mentioned before. Each strategic line has specific 2025 goals, and we have also identified 17 key company projects, 6 focused on safety, other 6 focused on environment, and the other 5 cross-cutting key projects to be rolled out in the coming years. The strategy will be followed up on a yearly basis by the Safety and Environment Committee, and informed once a year to the executive committee also, and see the progress made with the projects, with the metrics, etc. And just to finish with all related to the process, tell you that every year this strategy and the projects are being introduced in our annual bonus, in our employees' annual bonus, depending from a 10% till a 15 or 20%, depending on the business line. But climate, safety, and environment is included in our variable remuneration. So talking a little bit about the projects, and safety, as Josu John introduced, as a cornerstone of our HSC strategy. You know that our safety performance indicators have improved for the last years, but could we say that we are okay, or maybe we are still far from our ambition of zero accident? And what else could be done for not failing into complacency? So what else could be done? Okay, we have realized that the only way is taking the employees on board on this process. So, and trying to implement a solid safety culture, but based on the individual leadership of all of the employees that belong to Repsol and also our contractors. So if we would like to keep boosting safety, we have to influence people. And we are going to do that, or we are starting to do that with this program, the Safety Leadership Transformation Program, covering the 100% of our directors and people with people in leading positions in more than 32 countries. A total of 2,600 people will be trained with this program in the next 2 years, but it's going to be a different programs in terms of content and also in terms of format. In terms of content, we would like to tackle some specific issues, one of them the error consideration. So the majority of the accidents that Repsol or any other company has are due to a kind of latent causes such as design, maintenance, working conditions, lack of communications, failures on processes or procedures. But the majority of them are not causes inherent to the individual worker. So this is why we have to act on beliefs, on values, on behaviors around safety, and people in order to reduce the number of incidents caused by the human factor. Another thing that we would like to touch with the program is try to evolve from a blaming culture to a learning culture. So forget punishment and try to create a climate of trust where causes, suggestions, incidents, reporting will arise in order to improve our safety records. We have also noticed that it's not enough for an employee with following the safety procedures. So we need to be the really protagonists of safety, being very proactive. And this proactivity and this commitment is what we want to get with this transformation program. And to finish with, maybe we would like to increase the coherence between what the company says and what the leaders do. Because we really think that leaders, people in leading positions, has to act as role models to implement this safety culture. In terms of format, as Luis mentioned, the program is going to be quite innovative. We would like to use like experiential dynamics to create discomfort among employees, simulating big accidents, for example, or use role-play games to increase proactivity and other kind of innovative elements. So, and the years later, probably we will continue with the rest of the employees. Okay, process safety. We would say anticipation to prevent big industrial incidents or incidents related to process safety. As you know, the range of activities around safety is quite large. Those activities are called barriers, and we can group these barriers into three. First group, human barriers. I have thought about them before. The second group will be the processes. So we have to keep that the critical processes are in place and functioning correctly. By critical process, we understand permits to work, management of change, the processes of shutdown, emergency management, so incident investigation. These are the critical processes to keep an eye on. And the third group are the physical barriers, these elements that prevent incidents, or if they occur, they can control. So we shall work on the correct design, implementation, and maintenance of these physical elements, like in order to ensure the integrity of our installations. And this is what we are going to do in the coming years. Work on improving asset integrity and work on the correct safety barriers management. Just an example of one of the projects, we are working on developing leading indicators, precisely anticipatory indicators. We have paid a lot of attention in the past years to the lagging indicators based on past results, our safety performance, but through those preventive indicators, we could monitor the effectiveness of the safety barriers in which we are working. So, just for giving you an example of a leading indicator related to the second group of barriers that I mentioned, the process barriers. For example, the permits to work audits without funding over the total permits to work audits. So as less finding ratio, this is correlated to a best process safety performance. So if we monitor those leading indicators, we could act on the barriers before the incidents occur. So at the end of the day, with a good combination between lagging indicators and leading indicators, they could illustrate whether the progress made in asset integrity and barriers management is being effective or not. The environmental part of this strategy. Okay, our environmental strategy will focus on seeking for new opportunities for circular economy, which means producing products and services, trying to close the life cycle, or what is the same, reducing the raw materials, reducing water, reducing energy sources, reducing waste. Because we think this is the best way to minimize our environmental impacts, to try to reach excellence in the management of natural resources, and being cost effective at the same time. So we've been gathering for the last 2 years initiatives among the different business lines. And we have more than 160 initiatives in place related to the different spheres of circularity, raw materials redefinition, waste redefinition, new product or services, eco-design, so innovation in processes. The 76% of those initiatives are already in place. The others are under analysis. And I can give you just very quickly some examples. Through one of our projects in place, Recyclex projects, we are introducing 10% of mechanical recycled plastics in our current process of producing polymers for the next 5 years. Talking about lubricants, currently the 10% of lubricants are made with recyclable lubricants, and we aim to increase this figure up to 15% in the coming years. Also talking about lubricants, the container of the lubricants is made of a 30% of recycled material in terms of weight. But we have other initiatives related to different ways to recover the oil from the oil-based drilling mats for alternative uses such as construction, etc. Our LPG bottle seals are also made with recycled waste coming from one of our chemical plants in Spain. So several initiatives around circular economy. We will work on improving our metrics, our KPIs to measure savings or reduce in impacts, etc. in the coming years and setting specific targets. Water. We are very conscious that water is a strategic resource for Repsol, and we also think that will be one of the most relevant environmental challenges for the coming years. This is why, as part of our 2025 strategy, the comprehensive water management is going to be a key pillar. And how are we going to do it, or how we are already doing? First of all, improving our metrics, trying to increase their significance. So for years we've been gathering water data, compiling, reporting, but increasing their significance means deep the linkages between the metric and the asset to explain tendencies and to better inform the water management plans for the assets. Other thing that we would like to improve is our water risk assessments. We have an internal tool and we are working on improving it. Just as an example, in our assets of unconventional assets in North America, Canada, and Marcellus, thanks to the the exhaustive water risk assessment, we have avoid some important risk related to not having alternatives for flowback water or production water during times of limited well completion. So this is key. Other thing that we would like to do in the coming years is reduce the water consumed. For example, in our refinery in Peru, and thanks to a global water assessment, a catalog of initiatives have been identified in order to improve the efficiency of the water management. And we estimate that if we implement only the low-impact initiatives, we will get a 5% of reduction in water consumption. But if we implement the total catalog of initiatives, we will increase this figure up to 27% of reduction in water consumption. So we are looking for alternative sources of water, and we have several projects in place. For example, in our Canada completion operations, we are buying the grey water to the local communities around and using this grey water in the completion activities. In some of our refineries, we are doing more or less the same and taking reclaimed water for urban water treatment plants. instead of using fresh water for that purpose. We are also reusing the rainwater for road and paths construction in Bolivia in our drilling projects there. So then we save money in fresh water, but we also save money in transportation, the water from other wells. So several initiative value generation formulas for our production water, trying to purify it when separating from the gas or the oil and be used by the communities for agricultural purposes, etc. So several projects around water. With all these initiatives and also together with the best practice within the sector, we belong to different organizations such as IOGP, IPICA, all of them working on water. We are developing a kind of white paper on water that could be the base for our assets and projects to build their own water management systems approach. And lastly, and very quickly, some words on quantification. So we noticed that the pertaining environmental impacts quantification will be key to inform our business decisions in the coming years. And it's not easy, so measurement, reporting, and management of environmental impact is challenging. We need methodologies, we need tools, systems, metrics. So we think that our current environmental performance indicator maybe don't provide the most accurate quantification of our impacts, so that they're not fully appropriate to decide strategic mitigation measures. So with this project, the REDS project, which is included in our strategic digitalization projects portfolio, we are trying to develop a methodology that will help us to enhance our environmental management. Very quickly, because it's quite technical, but through the methodology, the main challenge of the environmental impact assessment is measurement the consequence or the environmental damage. So the methodology try to convert this environmental damage into dimensionless impact units that can be comparable, and we could have with the methodology the global impact for an asset and for the whole company. The methodology will also help us to quantify those environmental impacts, and the project also has the development of the tool to support all these calculations. So this project was presented in the last ESPI conference in Abu Dhabi, and we have started with the EMP, but could be extended to the rest of the company, because the project is intended to provide a benchmark among our assets in terms of environmental management, also mitigation choices for better optimizing investments, and it will also be a helpful tool for our due diligence as well. So very quickly, I leave it here and pass the floor to Antonio with the climate strategy. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Antonio Lopez. I am the head of Energy and Climate Department inside the Sustainability Division at Repsol. In our department, this is a corporate and cross-cutting department that we collaborate in a deep way with all the business units in order to search new reduction opportunities for our facilities. And also we work in a deep way with our strategy division, trying to integrate climate in our long-term strategy of the company. So in that way, this morning, I would like to give you some color of the process to integrate climate in the strategy of the company. To do that, I split my presentation in 3 parts. Starting in the Repsol long-term approach, first, I would like to define a new global carbon intensity indicator. Second, I will try to perform some scenario analysis with this indicator. And third, I will define some new long-term ambitions and targets with this indicator. Next, we will try to announce some targets to improve our short and medium-term levers. And finally, our finance director, Susanna Messeyer, will we talk about the Repsol experience in the green bond 1 year after its issuing. So, starting with the Repsol long-term approach, Repsol perceives these 2 goals, global goals, simultaneously. First, to fight against climate change, and second, to provide affordable energy. This idea helps us in order to define this new global carbon intensity indicator. It's an indicator that we use in order to evolve the company toward a lower emission future, and also we use this indicator walking the pace of on energy transition. So this is the indicator that we manage in all the presentation, and Luis Cabra was introducing them. Now the ratio integrates the concept of supply energy and with the lowest possible emissions. So this is the idea and the concept of this new indicator. Now, in order to define how we calculate this indicator, we introduce the framework, or we introduce the context of the Sankey's diagram. From the primary energy, following to the transformation process, and going to the final use of the energy. Starting with the primary energy, in a company as Repsol, we use oil, gas, biofuels, and also renewables as primary source of energy. We transform some of these energies, some of these source of energies in our refineries, in our chemical plants, in our cogeneration, and also in our combined cycles into final products. Of course, in the part of the renewables, we generate electricity as a final energy use. If we see the different, all the transformation and all the process that is included in the Sankey's diagram, we can see that in every point of this complex process, we generate some GHG emissions, and also in the end, we supply energy to our customers. So if we take into account all these points that we generate GHG emissions, are all the contributions, all the contribution of energy, we can calculate this global indicator for the company. GHG emissions proceed from the scope 1, 2, and 3. I mean, of course, we are not responsible of the scope 3 emissions, but we would like to include them in our indicator because we try to use this indicator in order to evolve the company towards the energy transition. So we need an indicator that takes into account all the GHG emissions in the complete life cycle of the company. Energy proceeds from electricity, from non-fuel products, and also from fuel products. Now we will try to work or to build a scenario analysis with this indicator. So the first thing is to define the framework, and now we try to draw this indicator. First thing we have to do is to define a reference scenario, And in our case, the reference scenario is the Sustainable Development Scenario from the International Energy Agency that is in good agreement with the 2 degrees scenario. Now we have to locate the starting point of the company. We calculate this point, well, this is an example, but we calculate the point of this indicator for the company following the methodology that we explained in the previous slide, well, based on the Sankey's diagram. Now, with this starting point, we have to move, maybe following the business as usual line, or maybe following that I call evolving company line, which is a parallel line with the sustainable development scenario. In the middle of these 2 lines, we can find the risk quantification, right? In order to mitigate this risk, we use some levers, some special levers, and we can short these levers according to their term of action. In the case of an oil and gas company, well, this is a list of levers that we have, starting with the ratio oil to gas in our portfolio, energy efficiency projects, mitigating methane emissions, reducing gas flaring, non-fuel uses, biofuels, renewables, CCUS projects, green and blue hydrogen projects, and in the long term, natural carbon sinks, or the most common name, natural carbon solutions. All of these levers can or has the ability to reduce our indicator. All of these levers, accordingly, has the ability to evolve the company toward a low emission future. So, and also all the levers are needed to do that transformation. The one lever won't bring the solution, and in other words, there is not a silver bullet in this process. Using all these levers, of course, in our opinion, we should include in a sustainable finance taxonomy, because all these levers help us in order to move the company to a lower carbon future. And all these levers, in combination with the internal carbon pricing, should be important in order to prioritize low carbon investments in the company. Only to remember, our internal carbon pricing is $25 per CO2 ton now, and will be 40 by 2025. So, with this indicator, we can explain, or we can use this indicator in order to move the company toward the future. We have set the ambition to reduce our carbon intensity at 40% by 2040. That is aligned with the Sustainable Development Scenario from the International Energy Agency. Well, generally speaking, our ambition is to be in step with society energy needs by 2040. But as we commented in the previous presentations, in order to show our commitment not only in the long term but also now, we have set a target to reduce this carbon intensity at 3% by 2020, bending in the short term the curve of our carbon intensity. That is the important thing, that we act now in order to bend this curve and to begin the reduction of this carbon intensity for the future. So, in order to achieve this 3% of reduction in our carbon intensity, we need to develop some short and medium-term levers. Specifically, talking about methane emissions, talking about gas flaring, and talking about a new reduction plant that we will show in just a minute. So, starting with the methane emissions to support the role of natural gas for the future, we announced a new commitment to reduce by 25% our methane emissions by 2025. This commitment is the result of active collaboration with different partners, sharing best practices and technical knowledge. Let me emphasize our participation in OGCI, Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, in the UN Oil and Gas Methane Partnership, and also in the Methane Guiding Principles Roundtable. In all of them, a fruitful and open discussion is established between companies and stakeholders. Our target is totally aligned with the ambitious and collective objective established by OGCI. And also our target is based on the periodical application of best techniques to detect, quantify, and repair fugitive emission, and it also based on the application of new mitigation technologies in our equipment. The second announced is our target of 50% reduction of the routine flaring by 2025. Like in the previous one, like in the target for the methane commitment, it's another one focused on all of our oil and gas operated assets. In fact, more than 60% of our gas flare emissions are associated to the upstream production facilities. We, Repsol, endorsed in 2016 the World Bank Zero Routine Flaring by 2030 initiative. So this goal is working in the pace to mitigate our routine flaring by 2030. To do that, we perform site minimization studies, segregating routine and non-routine flaring, and also implementing reductions actions from the design to the operation phases. And also, in addition, gas reutilization, it's carried out in most of our facilities. Finally, I will talk, or I would like to announce a new company reduction plan of 3 million tons of CO2 equivalent by 2025, during the period 2018 to 2025. This is a new plan, the continuation of the previous one that, consists in the reduction of 2.1 million tons by 2020 and during the period 2014 to 2020. The new plan is more ambitious than the previous one and emphasize and reinforce our commitment to GHG emissions mitigation. It's aligned with all the different initiatives that we endorsed in the previous years, and well, this ambitious initiative I explained in the previous slide about them. If you can see the graph, we keep and increase the reduction slope from the previous plan towards the year 2025. Every business unit, refining, chemical, and upstream, are involved in this and are contributing to this new plan. And the motto of this plan is our goal goes beyond improving efficiency in our facilities. So that is the lemma, the motto of this. Finally, this reduction target is based in several short and medium-term levels. For example, in the case of upstream business, we implement targets of related to methane emissions and gas flaring. Energy efficiency improvements are both for downstream and upstream businesses, and application of low-carbon technologies and renewable energy are applied for all the different facilities of the company. So this is the end of my part, and now Susana will continue explaining more about the green bond. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susana Meseguer, Head of Financing, and I would like to give you an update on our green bond experience. First of all, I will provide with some figures and update and delivery on our green bond commitments, and then I will share some ideas and remarks for the future. First of all, let me give a brief recap on our green bond. It was issued in May last year. It was 500 million euros, maturity 5 years. The annual coupon was set at 0.5%. That was the lowest coupon in Repsol's history. The coverage by pure ESG investors was very positive, around 50%. And also it was certified by a qualified third party. And at the top of that, there was a commitment that was the avoidance of emissions of 1.2 million tons of CO2. So how are we delivering on this? In June of this year, as Josujon mentioned before, an independent third party certified our first annual report on the green bond, referring to year 2017. This report is available on our website, and it shows that 51% of the funds have already been allocated to eligible projects, and 55% of the greenhouse gas emissions were avoided by the end of the year 2017. And this was thanks to the implementation of more than 130 actions. Energy efficiency projects are the main category where the proceeds are being allocated. We have implemented all the different energy efficiency typologies, starting with the improvement of operation criteria and network optimization, and advancing progressively towards other categories such as update of dynamic equipment and heat equipment. We can see also in this slide the distribution between the different types of projects, both in terms of proceeds allocation and also in terms of emissions avoidance. And since 2017, we continue identifying new projects eligible in order to reach our full commitment. And it's important to mention that we have constituted an internal green bond committee in Repsol that is responsible to analyze, review, and select all eligible projects where the funds of the bond will be allocated. And this committee is constituted by different members of the sustainability team and also from financing. And just to finish some ideas and remarks for the future, Josujon also mentioned in his initial speech that Repsol was pioneer in issuing a green bond by a leading oil and gas company, reinforcing our commitment to sustainability. It got many positive recognitions from the markets, financial institutions, different organizations, but at the same time, and very important, a necessary debate was opened about the important role of oil and gas companies in the energy transition and also in the sustainable finance. Today we have reviewed our strategy and main commitments on sustainability. And you have seen that they include, for example, projects for development of the new low-carbon business. And also, we want to continue with ambitious energy efficiency projects and new technologies such as CCUS. And we have no doubt that all these initiatives, all these projects have a real positive impact in the environment. And in this sense, our view is that it's very important to move towards a broader green taxonomy. A taxonomy that includes all these positive initiatives regardless of the sector. And also a taxonomy that allows all energy sources, including oil and gas, to play this key role in this energy transition and also to have access to sustainable financing. We really think that we all have a great opportunity ahead of us and also a big responsibility. And it will be necessary that all factors, innovation, technology, regulation, very important, and also financing converge in a single path in order to secure a sustainable finance, a sustainable future. And finally, with regards to Repsol's plans, of course, we want to continue being active in the sustainable and green financing markets in order to develop and to implement our sustainability plan. And last week, John presented our third quarter results, and they show that we are in a very healthy and sound financial position. So for the moment and in the very short term, we do not expect to access the debt markets, but for sure in the near future, we want to have presence in this sustainable finance market in order to fund projects for the development of low carbon business and also for new technology that contribute to the low emissions scenario. And for sure, there will always be projects that follow the ICMA's Green Bond principles and in the same way as we did with our existing Green Bond. And that's all from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.